All right, the market's shifting, right? We're challenging times, right? We have all these things happening right now where it's like the mindset. The mindset is the thing that you need to be thinking about out of everything else. You got to be around the right people. You need to have the right coaches, the right mentors, the right people to help you have more success. And today, thanks to our co-host, Mr. Dan Gandy, what's up, bro? We're going to be bringing you guys an amazing coach. And Dan, just give me a couple of your thoughts about who we're about to bring on and your thought process behind who he is before we even drop any names.
Yeah. I don't even know if Josh knows this, but when I first got into real estate back in, I think it was like 2014 or 15, my mentor at the time and team owner, he was like, hey, here's some podcasts to check out. And like, I just listened to like everything Josh had to say. And I used to just literally joke around the office about GSD and getting shit done. So this is actually, it's like a full circle almost 10 years later.
Let's fucking go. If you don't know, Joshua Smith, what's up? He's on the podcast from coaching, ebook, podcast, acquisitions behind the scenes. He's staying up until 3 o'clock in the morning and still showing up for our podcast to show for our audience. What's up, bro?
Yeah, no, it's an honor to be here, man. And it's, I appreciate you setting this up, Dan, and making this happen. I appreciate all your support, man. I didn't know that. And that's awesome to hear, brother.
Yeah. Brett, you can thank Brett Jennings, man, in the Silicon Valley, man. I was working for him back in the day, and he was like, hey, you got to check out this guy. I was like, all right, let's do this. So I've implemented that now as have my own team is like, there's no excuses. Let's get shit done. That's it.
Fuck yeah,
dude. It's been a wild journey, man. It's, because I started the podcast about 8 years ago, and it all happened on accident, man. Like I didn't plan it to morph into this thing. It was just, like most top producers, it's like we didn't get to where we are if we didn't have amazing people that were willing to pour into us and share so much of their time and knowledge with us that we couldn't repay. I just, and I've never been one afraid to go out there and ask people for help, for support, to pick their brain. And I just had so many amazing people, man, that would, to allow me to take them out to lunch and spend hours with me. And I could never repay them. And it was something that I always wanted to do. And I think most people that create an element of success understand it eventually becomes, their I don't know what you want to call it, but like they have this need to also give back to, that industry as well. But man, I was getting like a dozen plus messages a day. And I got to the point where it's like building my business. And then I had 3 young kids at the time. I'm like, dude, I just don't have time to help all these people out. And I wanted to help them. So then I just started like, send me in your questions. I'll answer them and I'll just toss them on YouTube. And that's how the whole thing began, dude, and then it just started to take off. And I was like, all right, let me turn this thing into a podcast and just kind of morphed into whatever the hell it is today.
Wow. Fucking serving, dude. It's something to say about like showing up. You just show up. You serve, you support, you're your true authentic self making it happen. And the fact that it just morphed into what it did. I mean, 7,000 homes sold, top 1% realtor worldwide, the courses, ebooks, all the links are down below. If you don't know who Joshua Smith is, man, check this freaking guy out. I remember I was at the airport. I just got back from California, woke up 3 o'clock yesterday morning, and Dan's like, fuck yeah, we got Joshua on the podcast. I'm like, yeah, let's go. And and so for the viewers and listeners, we want to get him in person. So maybe in the next year or so, Josh and I off air, we're talking about that. And so, airport, I hate lag time. So I'm like DM. Oh, let's reach out, because I was watching one of your videos, Joshua. I'm like, let's get him on the podcast. So I love that, man. I love that. Let's get into it. Mindset, bro. Mindset, the market shift. Agents are getting out of the business. What it was, a National Association of Realtors, 60,000 agents are getting out of the business, or have in the past 3-4 months, or whatever it's been. Don't know the specific stat there, but what are you seeing, man? What are you seeing in the marketplace? What are agents asking you question-wise that that people are dealing with right now?
Yeah. And I don't know how that stat compares to previous years. We hear stats like that. It sounds scary, but it's like, man, it's like ever since I've been in this industry, it seems like there's about 300,000 a year that cycle in and 300,000 a year that cycle out. So, but I will say that I'm having more conversations today, more so than at any point in my career, even during the great financial crisis, where people are struggling, man. It just, I don't have factual evidence, or it's not something I'm tracking. So I don't have, stats to back this up. So this is just my best guesstimate, but it seems like it's one of two camps, dude. You're either crushing it, and this is, the best or one of the best years of your career, or you are just getting murdered right now. And you know, it just comes down to definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Like we just came out of the longest bull market in recorded history. So anybody that hasn't experienced in this industry since pre-2012 hasn't really seen a normal market or anything other than a seller's appreciating market. Now I understand most markets today are still in that category as far as low inventory, multiple offers, prices are going up. You know, but we've seen a big shift behind the scenes, regardless of where you're at here, at least in North America, where transaction volume decline is just fallen off a cliff. And if you look at the rate of speed of that, along with the consecutive month over month, I mean, this is the first time, and at least to what I've been able to find in recorded history, that we've seen it at this severity. And a lot of people are having a difficult time adapting to this transaction volume decline drop off. I mean, we have all-time low affordability with real estate. You know, if you look at the affordability index, it's like 25%, and in health, it's about 75%. So, you know, you just have an abundance of people that either can't or are unwilling to go out there and transact in real estate because of insane high prices plus cost of capital going up. It's just created this crazy climate, dude. But here's the good thing, and you said mindset, right? So you got to understand, at least this is my philosophy. Anybody watching, listening, you can take this for what you will. But, you know, it's having this approach, and this has served me well for 18 years because I've seen the two biggest booms that real estate market's ever seen in recorded history. I've seen the biggest crash in recorded history. My business has been able to thrive regardless. You know, but I've always approached this with there is no such thing as a good market or a bad market. The real estate market's always somebody. My job as a real estate professional at the highest level is to adapt, shift, pivot, and change to whom the market is good for. And as long as you seek those opportunities, you know, there's massive opportunities. You know, but there are, and we can get all kind of pause there. I don't know if you have follow-up questions, but you know, there's two things that you got to do right now. Otherwise you're going to suffer.
Wow.
Yeah, no, there's a couple indicators that I want to talk about that you brought up. One of which is, you know, as the market is shifting, right, you are seeing exactly what you said. You're seeing the people who are crushing it and have transaction volume and tons of listings. And then you have the people that you would expect to have that, but have been doing the same thing over and over and over. But one of the biggest indicators that I've seen is principal brokers that I haven't seen do a deal in years, all of a sudden are writing offers on my listings. And I'm like, that would never happen if this wasn't a shifting market, because they've been teaching, coaching, advising, and sitting back in the chair, right? And not doing anything and just collecting split. So I think that was the first indicator. But the point I wanted to bring up and a question I have for you is that adaptation and that chameleonness that you have to have now in this market. Are you seeing people, you're specifically in the Arizona market, correct?
Yeah. Phoenix. But I mean, I have between clients and you know, went all over North America.
Yep. Okay. Are you seeing like a shift to investors? Are you seeing a shift to like divorce leads? Like, what are you seeing the most successful agents doing in order to adapt to these people that are going to thrive in each market?
Yeah. And this is where, you know, because real estate is, I mean, you got the business fundamentals that are the same regardless of what market that you're at. So there's a lot of, you know, I mean, 90% of this game is the same for all of us. But then that, you know, small 10%-ish, you know, because of the real estate being so hyper local, each market is different. You have different, you know, things going on in each market. So specifically here in Phoenix, I mean, we have investor purchases down about 67%. So here's an example. One of our investor clients that we've been doing a lot of business with for a lot of years, you know, to the magnitude of about 20 deals monthly. About a year ago, they essentially packed up shop and left. You know, so you know, it's like, okay, well, that's, you know, okay, I can't just feel the pain of doing 20 deals less a month, you know, from having them, you know, like, okay, we got to replace that, you know, and you know, I've had luckily when I got in this business, man, I got in 2005 and things were just so crazy back then. I was 23 years old. I was trying to figure this out. I was so used to pulling out that blank piece of paper and having to reinvent myself every day. Well, when the market crashed, it was such an easy pivot for me because I didn't have bad habits yet, you know, right? You know, but very quickly early on, I mean, it went from just insane traditional business, you know, to now just insane amounts of short sales and REOs, and then into hedge funds, and then back to traditional business, you know. And so my first 10 years was just it was like every day, dude, not quite every day, but it was just like a nonstop, just, you know, just having to adapt, you know, it taught me some big lessons, with that. So, in our market though, no, I mean, investors are essentially obsolete. Not that you're big investors, you're big institutional investors. So no, most of what we're doing, dude, is traditional business today. So we really had to, kick up our game on that. But with that, it's like, this is a market. And I have a lot of these conversations right now, common thing that I'm hearing, whatever it is that they're doing. But I'll give an example of, I had somebody reach out to me not too long ago that's like, hey, man, I've been cold calling for the last decade. It's worked really great. Well, I'm circle prospecting, but all of a sudden now, dude, it's just not working. I'm like, okay, cold calling it's not that cold calling is broken. The phone isn't broken, right? But you're shotgunning out your strategy. This is a market where we got to operate like snipers. Right. So you can't just go out there and half those people that you're reaching out to that are locked into 4% lesser rates. They have no motivation. Like, where are they going to go? So again, you got to identify, okay, like I said earlier, the market's always good for somebody. So who has a desire? So then we start making a list of, okay, instead of cold calling, man, okay, we got expireds and physicals. Now I understand there's lesser of those because of the shorter inventory, but then let's look at, okay, well, who else? We got absentee owners. This market's great for absentee owners, especially baby boomer absentee owners, which is the majority of them. One of the reasons for this listing inventory shortage, because when you break down, at least from my research, when I start breaking down, overall population, and population growth, along with the total amount of rooftops, it's not like we have this huge shortage that a lot of people think that we do. Now, we do have a shortage of actually units active on the market, but this is why I also think that there's hesitancy to a lot of these builders and people going out there and just plopping up new homes everywhere. Now, in certain markets like mine, you might see, just depending, each metro is different. So people might be experiencing different things, but as a whole, as a nation whole, wide, it's not like we're adding insane amounts of units or the amount of units that people think we need and should be adding, but I don't think a lot of people realize, dude, that for the first time ever, we are going through global population decline. Human beings actually qualify now for the endangered species list. So it's kind of a funky time where, in all these countries are trying to figure this out. One of the reasons why the border is so open of okay, how are we solving this? Like if you look at China right now, fastest aging population in recorded history. There's more 15-year-olds than there is 5-year-olds. There's double the amount of 15-year-olds than there is 5-year-olds. But anyway, with that being said, okay, you got all these boomers that were coming out of the largest all asset class bubble of all time in recorded history. So you had all these boomers buying second, third, fourth homes and not selling off these others. Well, now with inflation, the reality of it is that life is 30% more expensive today than pre-2020. So, if they're on fixed income with inflation, and then, now all these other asset classes starting to be affected. Okay, well, there's some big desire there for a lot of absentee owners in that baby boom generation that need to start or wanting to start unloading that property. So we look at that. Then we look at, okay, like short-term vacation rentals. So your Airbnbs, your Verbos, like in my market, revenues are down about 52% in the short-term rental market. And if you look at like Airbnb, the occupancy rates are the worst since the inception of that company on a nationwide level. So again, this is just an example of that sniper scope versus shotgun. Like a shotgunning ain't going to work in this market, dude. It's going to be very, very difficult. So you got to go out there and look at, okay, like who has that strong desire and need to go out there and unload, transact in real estate in this market.
Dan and I hear that all the time. Dude, but you work with everybody.
Oh man. And you're 100% correct. We started calling on absent. We've always been working with investors, but I switched 2 of my best team members that just kill it on the phone to absentees about 60 days ago. Boom, 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 boom. 4 listings.
Nice.
Immediately. And they're like, what's the script, Dan? And I'm like, they're either moving up in the investment career, which are not, or they're liquidating and downsizing and they want to redeploy that capital back into their life. And I'm telling you, just lead with that script. And that's been, that's been crushing for us.
Wow. I love that. Joshua, I have something I wanted to bring up to your attention that I think there are 2 key performance indications of why agents out there are having issues. One, because of influence, the shit they're watching, the shit they're digesting, the things that are in the media, right? We're on a leash. Let's get fucking real. The second thing is strategy. They don't have a strategy. They don't understand, like you said, if you're making calls, you're doing what you're doing, FSBOs, all the things aren't working, you got to shift, whether it's YouTube, whether it's social media, whether it's long-term, owners that own the home 30 years and they're going to, whatever, they want to travel, they want to do whatever. So what are you teaching or telling your agents right now, someone who's watching, how do you shift that mindset? Maybe when did you shift that mindset so the markets don't affect you. I mean, the market right now isn't easy for a lot of people, but you're having some of the most success that you've had in your whole entire career. Speaks a lot about your character and how you don't have that influence dictate the outcome of your noble future. And also you pivot. How? Like, how?
Yeah, so there's two things there, and I'll unpack each of those separately. So the first thing is, like you mentioned, watching and like what you focus on is where you wind up. So first off, dude, like I'm all about being informed, but the news is never going to allow you to be informed. So I'm always going to be like, just fucking ditch the news. Just ditch all of that crap. But one thing when it comes to, and like I said earlier, the market's always good for somebody. Just identify whom the market's good for and pivot accordingly. And then we'll lead into the strategy with that. But the other thing when it comes to that mindset perspective, one thing that is taking place right now that, either people have awareness of, or I think maybe subconsciously they can feel it, is that the middle class is getting just completely wiped out. And I've had mentors of mine telling me for years that this is going to take place, that there's no need for it. The middle class really, morphed into what it was during the Industrial Revolution. And now we're seeing so much, deindustrialization taking place. And now with the information internet age and age of AI and all this other shit, that it's just not needed. So people are just going to continue to get richer and get poorer. And you just got to make that decision, what side of that equation that you want to need to be on. So then from there, I mean, it's just one of those times. Like I'm telling my agents right now, my own real estate company, my own team, of look, I understand there's times in that you want balance and you need balance, but now is not one of those times. Like you just got to pick and choose which side of this fucking equation that you want to be on and get to fucking work. Like you got to pick, like, do you want to go out there and crush in this industry, or do you want to become extinct, have to go back to the corporate world and be somebody else's bitch? Like just make that decision. And I'm not here to judge, but just be real with yourself and make that decision, and then from there, get to work. I mean, this is one of these markets right now that you got to work hard and you got to work smart. There's no way around it. I mean, I'm working harder now than I've ever worked in my entire 18-year entrepreneur career. And it's just one of those things. Like we got to make that decision. And then the last thing I'll say there on who you watch, one rule that I follow that's helped me immensely is I only learn from the doers. So if somebody hasn't created the success that I'm looking to create in that element of my life, okay, I'm not going to go out there and listen to a damn word that they are saying, right? So just pick and choose. I mean, that will eliminate like 99% of the bullshit that you listen to or you hear out there. Okay, so then now with strategy, I mean, what is strategy? Strategy is just what is your effective overall plan? Like what's the effective overall plan to get the results that you need to go out there and get? So when you're looking at this, and we'll speak to, because a lot of people, when they think of strategy, think of lead gen strategy. So when I break down, so I have 5 steps to my lead gen strategy framework, which is number 1, identify who the market's good for. So we already talked about that earlier of that. So who's buying, who's selling, why are they buying? Like what are they buying? What are they selling? Where are they going? Where are they coming from? So we can go out there and identify that. Okay. Step number 2 is we identify their demographics. Step number 3 is the psychographics. So the easy way of putting that is pain and pleasure. Like what is the pain that they're currently experiencing? They want to buy or sell. What is negatively blocking them from wanting to buy or sell? Because the more that I can understand what prohibits them from buying and selling, okay, then I can go out there and solve those problems. Those become my unique selling propositions, right? And that's my differentiator, right? So, because in real estate, we're not actually selling anything. People already sold on real estate. Like we don't own the real estate. So what we are selling is that we're the best guide to get them from the current living situation that they want to go to. So the more that I can articulate and identify that I know what their problems are and have solutions to their problems, the more success I'm going to become. So an example of this is, okay, these higher interest rates. First thing I started doing is, okay, well, what can we do to get these down? Okay, well, if you're a 20% down conventional buyer, okay, you can get a 9% seller concession. Well, that makes a big damn difference on because that seller concession could be used to rate buy down points, so make sure our consumers are educated. And that's to make sure we're targeting 20% down conventional buyers, educate them that we have this rate buy down option. So then not only can we get them, a home that's a little bit more affordable than it was the last couple of years, but then now we can get their mortgage rates and their payments every bit, as at the same price point or lower than when interest rates were super low. And not all climates are for that, but my market is. So we got to educate them, with that. Okay. Step number 2 then is, okay, let me go out there and find who's desperate and motivated enough to go out there and offer, to sell a house at today's value plus offer a 9% seller concession, right? So putting those pieces together. Then from there, where do they congregate? Right. So where do they hang out? Online, offline. So that allows me to know where my message is going to show up. Right. I read a book by Perry Marshall, who has a great point here. He's like, dude, if I'm selling Bibles, I'm probably not going to go to a strip club to try to sell those Bibles because the buyer of my Bible is probably not hanging out in strip clubs. Well, and I know it's an extreme example, but it articulates the point so well. It's like, dude, you got to make sure you are showing up. You know, if I get asked all the time, well, should I be on TikTok? Should I be here? Should I be there? I'm like, dude, where are your buyers and sellers at? Like, what are the platforms that they congregate? Like they you know, dominate with congregation, whether it be online or offline. Like, you got to show up. Like, I could be the best networker in the world, but if I'm showing up in a room with a bunch of 17-year-olds, that does me no good, right? So, and then the last thing I'm looking at is, okay, well, what are my strengths, right? Like, how do I? So for me, I like inbound style. I don't like outbound. For me personally, you know, right? So then based on that, you know, the demographics show me who I'm targeting. The psychographics give me what my message is going to be. The congregation shows me where my message is going to show up. Then based on my strength is how my message is going to be delivered. So now I know who, what, where, and how, you know, and that, you know, puts together that whole entire strategy for us to deploy based on that given time.
And that's what people do, because we're in the lead generation business, as Gary Keller used to say, right? We're not in the real estate business. It's about identifying that target market. And that's what I see. That's the biggest difference I see between super successful agents and just okay agents, is that they understand the marketing vehicles, the target market, the unique selling proposition, and building programs and solutions to be able to prospect and generate and lead magnet people to them.
Yeah.
The video content changes, the YouTube videos changes, the ads are changing. That evolution and involvement is exactly what you're talking about. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then I would you know, highly encourage everybody that's watching or listening to this, that when you're coming up with like, okay, we'll just stay on this lead gen strategy because I know it's everybody's favorite topic. But it's you know, don't think of just generating the lead. It's, you know, from lead inception until the point they become a client. You know, and you got to understand timeline and psychology of each different lead source and what that looks like. You know, like with a Facebook lead, I'll let you say an example. Well, I know that they're in my system for 6.7 months on average in my CRM before they become a client. Okay. And they're not, because it's a disruptive source, you know, like they're just in that browsing phase initially. I got to develop and have a long-term nurture campaign to develop that connection and that rapport for, you know, at least the next 7 months to be able to convert them. That's vastly different than how I go out there and work my follow-up strategy for a Zillow lead, or an open house, or, you know, Grants Point absentee owner, or a FSBO, or is an expired, you know, right? Each one is going to need a different strategy.
Yeah. That segmentation is huge. And I think if you're somebody out there that is looking for help with that, like sometimes it's not just a coach. Sometimes it is just getting on YouTube or researching marketing 101.
Yes.
To create systems to build it if you can't afford to get, you know, advisory or somebody's clone system.
100%. Hey, shameless plug, sponsor, Liftoff Agent, free strategy sessions. Hit us up. Course Joshua Smith, he's going to help you out. Check out his course. Check out his ebook, the whole nine. Dan, he's always there to freaking serve as well. And I love, Joshua, how you were just so articulate. You just know. Boom, done, right? Here's what you got to do as far as influence. Here's what you have to do here for strategy. Because I feel like a lot of people get so caught up. And what do they say? Your vibe creates your tribe. Influence is real, and definitely love that. Like, hey, the definition of insanity is doing the same fucking thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. Love that. Let's talk about some of your success, some of the things that you're doing, some of the ways. So now let's get past that. Now you're having success. Now you have multiple things going on. Now you're starting to buy investments, and you have doors, and you're like Dan's level, right? How do you, and beyond, and now your level, Joshua, how do you balance, right? What the fuck is that, right? Like, is there balance? Like, you're talking family, you're talking friends, you're talking your business, you're talking sleep, right? Going to the gym, like next level. How do you manage that balance in your life?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is I don't worry about balance, because I don't, anybody that I found that tries to chase balance, like they just end up fucking themselves up more because now they're adding something additional to their plate. You know, so when I look at this, it's like, dude, I'm going to live an unbalanced life. Like, meaning, okay, I might work 14 hours a day. You know, and then I might only hit the gym for an hour, right? I'm not spending 14 hours on my body, but the cool thing is I don't need to. Okay, I might only spend an hour of uninterrupted intentional time with my kids. You know, now on weekends, or you know, I'll spend more and with that. But my kids, you know, they're busy; they got their shit going on too. So, you know, but the cool thing is I look at this like success does not come without sacrifice. But we get to pick and choose what those things are that we are going to sacrifice or not sacrifice. You know, so for me, man, I mean, I spend an abundance of time with my kids. I am able to invest and make sure that my health is always on point. And then I make sure my businesses are on point. So I like, what are those key components that are most important to me? Okay. My health, my business, my family. I make sure that those balls don't get dropped, dude. And there's no reason for them to. Now, what else gets sacrificed? Okay. Like, luckily I'm not into sports, but I'm not a fucking spectator in life. I'm not going to go watch a bunch of other motherfuckers on the field chasing their dreams, carrying a ball and fucking whatever. And I'm not trying to, hone on like rip on people that are into that stuff, but to me, it's like, I got to pick and choose what I'm going to make room for. I'm not going to fucking happy hours. I don't drink. I don't, even when it comes to hobbies, when I had kids, my wife and I, like, we just made the decision of like, so much of life, you can find the answers based on just interviewing people that have done it before you. It's like, okay, everybody that I've ever met, that kids are grown. They always, the thing that they always say is, man, I wished I would have spent more time with them. So then it's like, okay, well, let's make sure that doesn't happen and be intentional. Now, it may still happen, but if I can be intentional and try to prohibit from happening, at least I know what I did my part. So then, I can hopefully try to, not have to suffer that regret later in life. So we came up to, we're like, hey, we're not going to do any outside family hobbies. Like, we just came up, my wife and I just had a discussion on this with kids. Like, we're only doing family hobbies. Now, luckily our kids like to do a lot of the same shit that we like to do with snowboarding and hiking and mountain biking. And, yesterday we at the 4th, we're on the river and, doing all that stuff. But it's like, like when people reach out, like, oh, let's go get a sitter and go have a parents. And I'm like, dude, no, my kids can't come. Like, I'm not fucking going, dude. I'm either working out. My wife and I, we have a home gym for efficiency, and we work out together every night. Like, that's kind of, she hates when I say it, but that's kind of like our daily date night, and now my kids are getting that age where they're starting to work out with us, right. So again, success doesn't come out sacrifice, but you got to pick and choose those sacrifices. So that's speaking of the balance thing, and then with the business thing, a lot of people see what I do today, but I think what's important for them to understand is, look, I did one thing for about the first 10 years. But I built that, and that's what it took me for my first business to get to the point where I could exit from not just production, but exit from operations. So essentially replacing myself with the CEO, or however you want to call that in this industry. I replaced myself as a team leader with a full-time team lead. So then, dude, I didn't, my real estate business today takes about an hour of my week. Right. And that's just high level shit. Right. So that then freed up the focus to go work on the next project and go work on the next project. And, but with that, I mean, when it comes to business, it's okay. We got the product. Let's just say it's real estate. Then from there, dude, it's systems, processes, and people. You get those right, and you get to the point where you're delegating at the right time. Like, as entrepreneurs, it's our job to always be firing ourselves in the whatever most strategic position makes sense, so we can focus our time on the next highest, best use of our time inside that industry, organization. Eventually, like, you make all those strategic right hires. Okay, well, you're out of that business. Now you've created this residual semi-passive business, income that comes in. And now I can go work on the next business, and then the next business, and then the next business. And, so yeah, I've got a lot of different businesses, but it's not like I'm trying to grow, 3 different businesses simultaneously, because then you're chasing 3 rabbits, which doesn't serve us. So it's like, but once we get the strategy in place, we got the processes, systems, we got the team in place, got that thing dialed in, then I'll start working on the next thing.
Wow.
And let's touch on that for a second, because when people do have success, sometimes they can't give it up, right? It's like their baby that they're, even though they've hired everybody, they've removed themselves, but there's still that element of, high level management and but there's the level of micromanagement is trying to get past. My question is how did you decide what you wanted to do next once you freed up that time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, look, I would, this is all theory, but my guess is I would be much more successful based on how society defines success from wealth. If I just did one thing and focused on that one thing. But to me, dude, I'm just so fucking interested in shit. Like I just, like, I don't get how a human being can be bored. Like, to me, there's just so much interesting shit to learn, to know,
Yes.
So I sacrifice my wealth success you know, and to be involved in other things, because it just feeds my fucking soul. Like it just appeases. It's like building a new business is a hobby. It excites me, you know, right? I love the challenge of the build, and especially in that startup phase. Yeah, it's like my favorite fucking thing, dude. Right? You know, so don't think that, you know, I don't want anybody watching, listening to think that you got to go out there and start all these other businesses. You know, you look at, okay, Gary Keller became a bit, and I'm not with Keller Williams, but let's just, I mean, the dude built something epic, you know, right? So he became a billionaire by what? Focusing on one thing, you know, right? You know, with that. So, you know, Jeff Bezos, you know, whatever. I know Elon Musk, he's kind of an exception to the rule, but, you know, so with that though, how did I decipher? So, because I'm always looking at, okay, like, what am I good at? So when I exited from my real estate business, I went from working 80 hours a week to now I'm bored. And I'm like, okay, what's that next thing I'm going to go out there and do? You know, so I'm like, okay, what am I good at? What do I enjoy? What do I enjoy doing? So I looked at, okay, well, dude, in order to build a highly successful, you know, one of the top teams in the world, I was like, I had to get really good at coaching up my agents and coaching agents, right? I'm like, you know, I'm really good at coaching. And that was a part of the business that I loved the most. Not that I didn't love working with the consumer, but fuck, dude, once I started bringing on agents and working with my agents, that was the part that, like, boom, that I knew that that's what I need to be doing for the rest of my life. So I'm like, okay, I love it. I'm obsessed with it. I'm good at it. And there was demand. You know, I had a lot of people messaging me frequently saying, hey, will you coach me? Will you mentor me? My answer was just, no, I'm busy building my own business. I don't do that, you know? So there was demand there. So that started off my next company, which was the coaching company. Well, then I started the coaching company. And then very quickly in that, you know, people reaching out to me constantly saying, hey, man, I want to use, you know, the systems that you have, but I can't afford the $1,500 a month systems. So then I quickly realized that, dude, like there's been no all-in-one website CRM system that really has been built for the individual agent. 97% of this industry are individual agents, never be on a team, never join a team. And it just, the product didn't exist out there, and there was demand, you know? So I went out there and created a software company, you know? So each one is just kind of led off of, you know, okay, what's my knowledge base? What am I passionate about? But also making sure that there's demand there.
Wow. That is huge. I love that. So in closing here, I have two questions, and Dan, of course, if you have any last questions on your end, last two questions for me is like, what does the end game look like? What is like that perfect kind of like, all right, I'm in my 70s and 80s and shit's just like humming along. This is the end game. And I would love you to leave us with GSD. Like, what does that mean so people can understand specifically the value proposition, you know, the meaning behind that?
Yeah. So the end game for me, dude, is there isn't one, man. The end game for me is this life ends. You know, I contemplated several years ago about retiring. I took off 8 months just to force myself. It was the most painful thing I ever did in my life. but I forced myself to really assess and analyze, you know, what path, what journey, all of this stuff. And, you know, but dude, I was just, again, it was so much pain for me, man. I was, you know, something I learned early on too was like every time I'd set this big goal. Now I still set big goals, but I'd set this big goal thinking that, okay, once I achieved that big goal, fulfillment was going to be achieved. But then I'd hit that goal and it felt cool for like 2 fucking seconds. And then you're like, okay, what's next? So then I'm like, you know, very quickly I was like, all right, I need to create goals that have no finish lines. You know, and you know, I've always been a huge Steve Jobs fan, and he's just like, look, you got to learn to love the process, man. It's not about the, you know, okay, Apple gets acquired for X. He's like, you just got to learn to fucking love the process of the build, you know? And so I've really, you know, attached to the process, detached from the outcome. I've learned to, you know, just like working out, man. And I mean, I eat the same foods every single day, day in and day out with my, you know, whatever. It's like, yeah, it's mundane, it's boring, but I've learned to love that. It's like, you know, having the good health in the body is just the byproduct, right? So business for me, I mean, I definitely have, you know, goal. I mean, so like our 10-year target is 4,000 franchises nationwide between, you know, throughout North America. Software is, you know, 25,000 clients. When I say clients, credit cards on file. Within my own internal real estate company, you know, 1,000 agents. You know, so I have some targets there with that.
Wow.
Yeah, but again, like I don't, you know, it's, I mean, I think within 10 years, I'm pretty certain on this, that I can build $1 billion business portfolio, you know, but between, you know, the two main legs of my business that I have that can achieve the highest valuation. but I don't allow my fulfillment to be attached to that, right? It's like the fulfillment comes day in and day out of, just the excitement of the growth and the build. And like I do, when I visualize this, it's like, and I talk to my, all my people all the time about this. I'm like, you guys are like, I visualize myself coming at 90 years old in a fucking walker, like, all right, what's up, Pete? Like, let's get this, right? Like I don't like retirement's probably the only curse word in my language, dude. And it's, it's because I just love it, man. And it's not about the money for me. And like, what are you going to fucking do? Like, what am I going to do with my time? It's like sit around watching Netflix. I mean, that's, like just doesn't appease me at all. So, I don't know if that answers your question there.
Yeah. 100%. And GSD, tell us, what the fuck does it mean? What's the mission? What's the value? I'm ready. Links down below. Let's go. I see it. www.gsdmode.com.
Yeah, GSD, it's saying get shit done. Nothing super fancy there. But, what it represents for me is in my early 20s, before I started my success journey, I became extremely depressed, like to the point where I was having suicidal thoughts each and every day. To my low moment where I planned out my suicide, I'm scaring the living shit out of me. And, at that point, I realized, man, I got to turn some things around there. Well, at that same time, and it never connected until I went through that low moment. But I was worked at a local hospital as a nurse's aide, and a lot of my time was spent on the hospice floor. And that's where, people go. That's kind of in the hospital world, they call it heaven's waiting room. So I'm spending all as a nurse's aide, and like my job is just kind of entertain and keep the patients comfortable, right? So, and I loved it, man. I always say, man, if I could have figured out how to make more than $10 an hour, I probably would have done that for the rest of my life, dude. It's such an awesome experience. But I'm having all these in-depth conversations with human beings, with the last conversations that they're going to have, or towards those last conversations of because some patients were in there for 3 months, some in there for 3 minutes, right? And I'll tell you, and I never tallied. But whether it's hundreds or maybe 1,000, I don't know. This is a several-year experience. Conversation with people on their deathbed, and every single one of them was a shoulda, woulda, coulda. Like every one of them had this regret list. And I never had one patient that was like, dude, life was amazing. Life was epic. I'm ready for that next journey, whatever that is. Dude, everybody was like, should have went after a different career. Went after this path because it was a safe thing to do. Man, should have married somebody different. Wish I would have been a better father or husband. Wish I would have traveled. And you could see the pain in their eyes, dude. And those two things clicked at that moment, because I was looking for how do I go out there and find fulfillment for myself, because I wanted to solve my depression. And so I came up with, I call it now the ultimate scoreboard. So at some point of our life, we're going to be sitting there laying on our deathbed in that moment, reflecting, playing back the tapes. And we're going to ask ourselves, what do we do with this gift called life that we've been blessed with? Do we do something epic with it, or we piss it away like 99% of the population does, and then have this shoulda, woulda, coulda list? So getting shit done for me just represents, okay, number one, getting clarity on what must happen between, I'm 41 right now, between 41 and 84 laying on that deathbed, or whatever that insert, whatever age that's going to be, what must happen in order for that conversation to go the way that I want it to go. And everything in between there is just getting shit done, so I don't have those regrets when this whole journey ends.
Wow, that's what it's about, man. That's why when I first heard your YouTube content and all of this, and that whole mentality of like, I remember that story about you telling about working in the hospital, and it stuck with me for years, because I was always like, there's so many people out there that go to work. There's so much value in what they are doing every day, and they find, comfort in it, and they do it. But at the end of the day, like, what's their overall journey and plan? Like, how do you piece this together? And a lot of times people just need to pull that plug and change their environment and do things differently. And I think that GSD also, that's what it meant to me, is like, you got to be constantly moving forward on your goals, both physically, mentally, and professionally. It's not just what you do for money every day.
Yeah. I love that. And Dan and I had that conversation the first time we talked, dropping DMs to each other. And it was just like, we want to be the man. We don't want to work for the man. We don't want to fucking be in our debt. Like, I remember that conversation with you, Dan, which is awesome, man. And I just want to say my gratitude towards you, Joshua, because I think so many people forget to just take a second, take a deep breath, look around, and fucking be thankful. And so thank you for your passion, your delivery, everything that you do to serve us, because obviously you've influenced Dan. Now I'm going to go digest a lot of your content myself. And this is a great way to kick off the 5th after I've been out for a week, and then fucking 4th of July and all the things. So I'm sure our guests got massive value. Go follow Joshua, man. Go check out his content. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel, man. Wow.
Yeah, no, truly means a lot. It's been an honor being here jamming with you guys, man. It's been a lot of fun.
For sure.
Let's go. Awesome. Well, we appreciate you, Dan. Appreciate you, Joshua. Appreciate all the viewers and listeners, as it is our intention for you to take some from episodes, apply to your business, have more massive success. We'll see you all on the next one.